Hello, and welcome back to This Podcast Counts as Socializing. We're your hosts, Nick and Kayla, and today we're joined by the lovely and talented Kaylee. Hello, Kaylee.
Hi, lovely to be here. I'm so excited.
Thank you for joining us, Kaylee. I'm really happy that you're here with us. I have a quick little icebreaker question for you. Hopefully, I don't put you on the spot too bad.
Okay.
So my question for you is, what would your baseball walkout song be?
Right now, I'm gonna go with a hard "Just Let Me Out." And
That is
I
a
think that's just the
fantastic
perfect
answer.
hype up. Like it's gonna get everybody going.
Mhm.
I know, a
Yeah.
no skip song in my current state.
Yeah. I definitely think you're hitting a home run after this.
Yeah.
Nick, do you have an answer off the top of your head?
Oh man, off the top of my head,
I
not
know. I'm like,
I gotta
put
go
Kaylee
look at
on
my
the spot, but I didn't have
Spotify
an
and scroll through and pick a song.
No,
out,
just
you know?
off the top of
Yeah.
your first song that comes to mind. First song that comes to mind.
Fade Into You by Nazi Star. I think it would be
I don't
horrible.
even know what that. I don't
but
even
it'd
know
also
that
be
song.
really
How does
good.
it go?
Yes, you do. You
How
know
does
the
it go?
song. You know the
How's it
song.
go?
I don't know it.
It's like
Sing it for
I don't
us.
want to sing. No, I don't want to sing it.
No, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
It's like
Okay.
I want to.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard
All
that
right,
song
Yeah,
before.
let's move on. Yes, you've heard it for sure.
Okay,
It's
so
good.
I've hyped up this topic to you guys a little bit, and I haven't divulged what it is. I've just mentioned I've done a lot of research for this topic, and I think it's gonna be a multi-part series.
Oh.
There is a photo in the drive titled episode vibe or something like it. I want you guys to click on that and you'll get a little idea of what I'm about to talk about. And again, for our audio listeners, all of the photos I'm going to put on our Instagram. So make sure you go follow us at This Pod Counts.
Wait, what am I opening?
It says episode vibe,
It's
something
the
along
woman,
those
right?
lines.
Love women.
Do you find it, Nick?
Mm-mm. That's fine. Just
Nick!
I'll find it. I'll find it. Don't worry about me.
I'm about to flip my phone
No,
and show
Nick.
him.
Okay, yeah, just show him, Kaylee.
Okay. Yes, I understand now. I just
Okay. So I think this is going to be
my bad.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the first in the Feminine Rage series.
Ooh.
And today specifically, I'm going to be talking about systemic sexism. So this is what
Real.
I meant when I said we're going to be a little heated during this episode. And I do want to give a blanket trigger warning for discussions of sexism and racism. Specifically, I've included a couple quotes that I think will be anger inducing. Nothing that I don't think was without a purpose. I think everything will add good perspective to the topic. But if you're not interested in hearing about that today, then maybe you just want to skip this one and go to episode 1 and 2. So to start, I found a quote that I really like, just describing what feminine rage is. So this comes from writer Alicia Alvarez. She says, quote, "Feminine rage is an ancestral and inherited response to the struggles, oppressions, and wrongdoings that women have been subjected to, described as a compilation of the anger that our ancestors were unable to express that is passed down through the generations. This is an abstract idea and concept of a specific generational trauma. Whether women are born with this rage or it is developed as they're exposed to social and political issues is unknown." And feminine rage, so end quote. Feminine rage is an example of the ongoing unequal treatment between genders. And highlighting examples that spark feminine rage, create discussions that may help educate others on how to handle and solve these rage-inducing situations. Go away.
So is this
Steve's a
being
fan.
mad on behalf of your grandmother because your grandfather kind of
Not
sucks?
That could be part of it. I think the big part of this quote here is the specific generational trauma, a compounding of these interests, these just the compounding patriarchal rage that then gets ingrained in our society. And I'm gonna give a little history of feminine rage and then a little history of more or less a history of sexism, which it's, and like I said, I did a lot of research for this episode, but it is very like, there's so much to it. Like there's so much that I missed, and I'm like going through like thousands of years in history and like a couple bullet points. So I'm gonna miss things, but just trying to give us like the gist so that we can have a productive conversation, hopefully.
No, it's the way that I definitely have like learned 2 new things about like sexism in the past week. So going through the entire history of like feminine rage right now would not be possible.
And like I said, I think there's going to be a lot of different feminine rage topics. So this is going to be a very brief history of feminine rage. Like, for example, I found this really interesting dissertation on feminine rage depicted in art throughout history. Like, I think that would be a really fun topic. So I tried not to include a lot of that here because I was like, I'm definitely going to talk about that at some point in the future. So this is just a little history behind feminine rage. So female anger is typically thought of as irrational and unprovoked, with such descriptions as the crazy ex-girlfriend, bossy, bitchy, the angry Black woman stereotype. Women are often thought of as over-emotional, and therefore outbursts of emotion are frequently dismissed and reflect negatively on their original counterpart. And so my question was like, when did this start? Like when did we first start pegging women as like emotional? So the first written publication that I could find about feminine rage in this negative light comes from, nonetheless, the Bible between 1015 and 975 BC. This is Proverbs 21:19. The King James Bible translation writes, quote, "It is better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman." So the irony of this proverb, they're basically like, it's better to like live and fend for yourselves than have like a mad girl around you. Like
this is like the original my bitch wife kind of thing, right?
Literally, like 975 BC.
Yeah.
So in this proverb, like the irony of it is exemplified in the book Gender and Emotion, the social psychological perspective, published by Cambridge University, where the researchers found women tend to be angered by the negative behaviors of men, whereas men tend to be angered by women's negative emotional reactions. So it's like, women are mad because you're fucking up, and men are mad because you're pointing it out.
Right.
However, men are not taught to change their behavior, rather to seek solitude from anger it causes women, and to therefore have to stand for the anger itself and the women presenting it. So that's all I'm going to go into right now, because I want the big topic of this episode to be about systemic sexism. And in order to talk about sexism, we have to talk about racism, because they're so intertwined and they kind of deviate from the same place. So first, what is systemic sexism? How is it different than just sexism? So the core of systemic racism and sexism is that it's not merely an emphasis about human differences in thinking that another group of people is inferior to its own. Rather, the institutional nature of racism or sexism establishes a permanent group hierarchy that is believed to reflect the laws of nature or the degree of God. It thus becomes the norm of a culture to think and behave according to those rules. So it's just more ingrained into your society. It is like, it's a big quote that I saw describing what systemic problems are is people saying like, that's just the way it is. So starting in the 1800s, the first evolutionary schemes of women in non-white races were seen as embryonic or juvenile forms of adult white males. They were seen as intermediates between full humans and animals. These ideas regarding evolution have continued to be then embedded in pop culture and science, leading to the issues of systemic sexism and racism that we see today. The term institutional racism, also known as systemic racism, was first coined by the Black activist Stockie Carmichael and political science professor Charles Hamilton in Black Power, The Politics of Liberation. They stated, they make the distinction that systemic racism is embedded in the practices and social structure of an organization and is less overt and therefore less criticized than racism that blatantly goes against social norms. In the same way, systemic sexism exists when sexism becomes part of the operation of institutions and cultures. So the big part for me here was them saying, because it's less overt, it's less criticized, it doesn't get pointed out, it's not going against social norms.
Yeah, it's not like you have, two separate schools for Black and white children. It's like you have a well-funded school that happens to be in a very white neighborhood kind of thing.
Exactly. So it's
gives
so
more like for the people on like the other side to be like, no, like this is just the way it is. Like we didn't go out of our way to do that. Like that's a reach. This isn't sexist. Right. You're just reaching. This isn't racist.
Yeah. And you're very
I'm
rarely
end with a
confronted with it. You're very rarely like confronted with it directly. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like you kind of have to go out of your way to like, especially if you're in that like privileged class or group to begin with, you kind of have to go out of your way to like find, like to see that, oh shit, like this is actually an issue.
And then because it's not overt, because it's not going against social norms, when you are confronted with it, you have this like area to kind of like disagree with it and like make a case against it, like it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're gonna see here, because I'm gonna go through a little bit of history about systemic sexism, is that the issue is it's so old. Like it starts from the beginning. It's just so ingrained in the way of thinking and like the foundations of what we've built ideology onto that it's like, where do you even begin changing it?
Yeah.
And I do want to point out a lot of what I'm going to talk about now is pertaining mostly to the Western world. So this isn't going to be like a global history. I'm sure there's a lot of it. And I'm, like I said, many episodes could be made about this. So to start, the Great Chain of Being, also known as Scala Natura, is a hierarchical system of all matter and life first developed by Aristotle and later thought by medieval Christianity to have been the degree of God. So I've put an image of what this structure is for you guys to look at. And basically this is our first like breaking down of people by a particular system. Did you find it, Kaylee?
I found it.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit. So the ladder of existence, starting at inanimate matter, followed by lower plants to higher plants like trees, then lower organisms like sponges to lower animals like arthropods and fish to lower vertebrae like mammals, up to men, which exclusively meaning males. So women are not considered in this same category of male, which in the original hierarchy made by Aristotle, men are at the very top. And you'll see in the image that I've given you, God is there then added above men, and that gets added during the medieval time when they're like, God has decreed this hierarchy and men are this step lower. So it's also, in Aristotle's account, go ahead, Nick.
It reminds me a lot of like changes that were made to the Bible through like the Middle Ages and stuff. And like all of the apocryphal gospels and stuff where like, women who had positions of power in the early church were like written out of all of these stories, or women that had positions of power in the Bible in general were written out of stories. Their roles were reduced, all of this as part of, making it more justifiable for men to really hold the dominant position in society.
Yeah, and we'll see a lot. Go ahead, Kaylee. Sorry,
I like that demons are so high because I feel like that goes back to the religion based on fear. Like to what extent? No, but like to what extent is a lot of people's religion based on like a fear aspect?
And below the humans? Yeah, I get that. It's just the fact that they put women closer to animals than they did to men. That is.
Yeah. And we'll keep getting into that, like how early ideas of evolution play into this. And it's kind of gross to talk about.
Yeah, some early evolution stuff lended itself to a lot of eugenist eugenicist arguments and that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is basically so Aristotle kind of basically fucked up all of history by coming up with this hierarchy because it becomes the basis for all racism and sexism to come in history. Like, it starts this idea that we can make that biologically that there are these ordered differences between people.
He said we can separate. And we
so he starts this idea of categories, and for him, like, I think he was trying to think of like things scientifically. He was just so off the mark, like just didn't have any context for anything, but people took it so seriously,
right? And I feel like some of it too was like kind of observational, maybe, like he was observing the society that he was already in, because ancient Greece was like already, and Rome was already pretty patriarchal, and
and we'll get into it a little bit more. And it's like, I guess, like, if you were just observing and you didn't have like the ways to critically like pull things apart the way we do now, maybe some of these ideas, like playing devil's advocate, could make sense, like as I start talking about like what he was observing and why he thought these things. But it's like they're so off base and they don't get rewritten really ever, and they continue to like impact pop culture and the way we design things today, and influence how we research and how science is done. And like did I write a year down? Oh yeah, so this was in 335 BCE. So like off the bat, where men are causing chaos for the world. So in Aristotle's account, women were male fetuses that did not fully develop. Quote, "We much look upon female character as being sort of a natural deficiency," end quote. Kaylee, yes, are you okay?
Do we know anything about Aristotle's relationship with his mother?
That is such a good question. Let me write that down, because
I think we should look into that.
Yeah, natural deficiency is like so loaded.
Like,
this continues. It doesn't feel like it, because he believed that heat was necessary for development and that women did not receive enough of it. Women were defective males that did not finish developing.
I'd love to see Aristotle give birth.
He has some thoughts on birth too. We will get there.
You want him to be boy preggers?
Oh wait, no, it's this next sentence. It's this next sentence. Furthermore, he believed that women's role in reproduction was secondary to the role of men. Women provided the material matter, and he believed this because of menstrual blood, while men provided the cause of life, or what he called the animating essence. Quote, "The first efficient or moving cause, to which belonged the definition of form, is better and more divine in nature than the material on which it works," end quote.
How much
that
do you
silence
get
says
for,
a lot.
like, selling sperm at a sperm bank?
Yeah,
I think it's a fair amount of money.
No, it was like $7,000 compared to eggs. Yeah, but lot. I looked into donating eggs, and like, I'm not against it. It's like such a process. Like, apparently it's a very intensive procedure.
It is. It's like really invasive, and
it's not just jizzing into a cup, which is so unfortunate.
Right?
Life's unfair. That's what we're learning from this episode.
Reproductive organs are
life's unfair.
Pretty simple.
Is the byline. But yeah,
not according to Aristotle.
Yeah, he said that I just want to say this again. Women's role in reproduction is secondary to the role of men.
I don't know, man. You do like a few minutes of work, and then like she has to incubate this thing for 9 months.
He's providing the animating essence.
Of course, yes, the animating essence.
She's only providing the physical material.
And who needs that?
Who needs that?
Yeah.
So literally. starting from 335 BCE, we already have the ideology that men are innately superior to women. And the publication of those ideals only continue to spread and therefore become ingrained in our culture. So by the 17th century, this is so much part of the system and the general understanding of the way that things are, that it was assumed as divine origin. they wrote, misfortune arose when someone chose to abandon or elevate his place in the great chain. So it was like, we are by God where we are in this hierarchy developed in the year 300, and you need to stay in your place because that's the way it is. But this is an important distinction because Aristotle Aristotle did not see all humans as equal, but he also did not see all men as equal. But this distinction wasn't made biologically. From his point of view, men were separated by culture. So, for example, the Greeks were far superior in his eyes, but a man could learn to be a cultured Greek. So when did this change? When did it become a biological distinction? Because this does become the justification for racism. And a lot goes into this change. I'm about to give you the most abridged version of how this happened because it was very complicated and thousands of years of history go into this. Here's the gist. So some old Christian philosopher guy decides that what distinguishes humans from animals is that they have the ability to receive Christian teachings. Okay, cool. So this causes a lot of Jews and Muslims to either flee Spain or convert to the Christian religion. However, even though these people converted to Christianity, there was a lot of controversy within the community that their conversion wasn't legitimate. So this led to the concept of blood purity, which meant that you had Christian ancestry. Okay, you can see where this is going. So this continues to snowball into further and further racism and ultimately becomes the justification for the Western slave trade. So racism and sexism in modern history become less socially acceptable. However, the ideology is already ingrained into the culture that it was built upon and ultimately leads to the systemic discrimination that continues today. That's all of sexism and racism's history in 4 bullet points.
Okay, that's 2 minutes of explaining racism.
Every time I hear a phrase like blood purity or whatever, I always think of Harry Potter, and I'm like, why did you put like wizard supremacy in your book? Did you really need that? Like, it's kind of weird,
bro. Because that's exactly what she was trying to fucking say, Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but
did it?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, no, it didn't. I have a lot of qualms with the way the Harry Potter books are written. I have a lot of nostalgia for them.
So fair.
If Harry Potter has one hater, it's me. My next episode.
Everything wrong.
Yeah.
That's how we'll get people to like us.
No, it's the way that Kayla and I were talking about how I had a human rights minor right before this. And this is just like one of my classes. So it's like the history of pretty much racism.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
I feel like I'm back in my seat.
We could talk about this forever. My point with this
is
like I'm not
very old and very deeply ingrained.
It's bad.
It's also very bad. I agree.
So my point in this is not to give like the
this
whole
pod
history
is against racism.
Yeah.
We are anti.
If there's one thing we could say about this podcast is we're anti-racism and anti-sexism. But yes, my point here is not to give us the entire history. That would be crazy. We could do very, very, very... We could talk about this for a very long time. There's a lot of history that goes into it. Exactly. Yeah. My point here is just to say that this was basically the building block for how it became part of culture, how these ideas became ingrained into our systems, because it started so early on and it continued building, and it is now part of history and ingrained into culture. So we're going to see time and time again how this hierarchy established by Aristotle goes on to influence scientific practices and discovery. For example, Bostonian physician Edward Clark wrote against women becoming physicians, arguing that women's biology prevented their handling the rigors of higher education, especially when having their periods.
Oh.
And as someone who has had their period in higher education, I would say it did hinder it a little bit.
I think I shouldn't have to do anything.
And you know what? But the point is not that I couldn't do it. It just means that I'm better than you because I did.
Mm-hmm.
No, I feel like I've never let that distract, like, schooling. Like, I get home and then I'm like, I can't do anything. But when I'm at school, I'm at school. I'm in that mindset.
It's one of those things where it's like, it's just part of your life. Yeah, it's just part of your life. So you're just like, I'm going to turn it off and on. Like, I'm just going to fucking ignore it.
Yeah.
And the fact that I
having a period
still did it, just like I said, it just makes me better than Knit. That's all I'm saying.
It does. It obviously should disqualify you from having higher education, but raising a child, taking care of the home, no biggie. You could just
let me withdraw right now.
Stupid.
Like,
yeah, Kaylee, you need to email your professors that your biology prevents you from handling the rigors of higher education.
Next week, I'll be like, actually, I did get my period, so I'm gonna have to leave, guys.
There's more. British immunologist Almarth Wright in 1912 warned against women having the vote because, quote, the mind of women is always threatened with danger from the reverberations of their physiological emergencies. And I will be calling my period that from now on. I'm having a physiological emergency.
Shut up.
This viewpoint, though, ultimately impacted scientific theories of sex determination following the discovery of the X chromosome. McClune, I think is how you pronounce it, in 1902, he saw grasshopper embryos of two types, one with an odd number of chromosomes and one with an even number of chromosomes. And I found this explanation a little confusing. You need to remember at this point, they don't know the Y chromosome exists. They've discovered an X chromosome. That's all they know. Okay. He therefore hypothesized that the animal with the odd chromosomes, the organism with one extra X chromosome, must be a male. Because, quote, it would seem most natural that the determinant would be for the purpose of carrying the transformation beyond the production of ova to spermatozoa. So this goes back to Aristotle being like, women are just less developed. So men must need like a little extra oomph, an extra chromosome to make them men. So he's like, this one that has two X chromosomes, that must be the male.
Mm-hmm.
You're following?
Obviously, yeah.
Obviously, right. That makes sense. Because Aristotle said so. Fucking how many years is between 300 BC and 1900?
2200-ish.
Many?
Yeah, we're still listening to this guy. Okay. So
2 millennia plus.
At least 20.
And he's like, well, Aristotle said that they needed a little something extra, so therefore. Okay. So however, a few years later, 1905, this is disproved because it's wrong, through a karyotype that the male has one fewer chromosomes than the female. So they did a karyotype and they saw it and they were like, this is wrong. Okay. Despite the discovery, even up through the 1970s, publications are explicitly reporting that the male is a female with, quote, more development or, quote, something extra. So they find out in 1905 that the male actually has one fewer chromosome, but up to the 1970s, they are still reporting that males have further development or some more chromosome of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So I'm just composing my thoughts because I'm like, how do I even bring up this next point? Okay. So when doing scientific research for a very, very, very long time, they were like, we gotta have like a reference point, right? So they designed something called the reference male. So the reference male is a white man between 20 to 30 years old, weighing about 70 kilograms and 180 centimeters tall. And he has been used as the physiological model since at least the 1920s. So he's been used for calculations of radiation doses, metabolism, pharmacology, organ transplants, optimization in the workplace. So I saw one article describe the reference man as his superpower is representing every human that's ever existed.
I've seen the reference man pop up in radiation dosing and stuff like that before.
I was going to say his big thing is that they use the reference man for radiation dosing, which is a big issue because women do experience radiation differently because they typically have a smaller body mass than men. Yeah. They typically have thinner skin than men. So they're going to experience the adverse effects of radiation at lower doses than a man would.
Love literally.
By the way, that's so like the reference man is about 5'11" and 155 pounds for our American viewers.
Thank you.
Not the 5'11" man.
I know, short king. So obviously this is going to create issues, right? Because they're taking like a very narrow archetype of humanity and like trying to apply it to all research. And I could probably do like an entire episode just on sexism in the medical field. Women wait longer than men for diagnoses and pain reliefs. They're also more likely to be misdiagnosed or discharged during serious medical events. Female participants have historically been excluded for participation in research studies and data collection, with male data then being generalized to female and intersex individuals. Some of the reasons people thought this was a good idea include a concern of decreasing the female's fertility during a study or harming a pregnancy, research bias from predominantly male researchers, and the perception that males are the representative default of the human species. So again, this goes back to Aristotle being like, man represents humanity. Yes.
Harming a pregnancy is kind of valid. That would suck.
I was gonna say, some of these I get. Yeah. I get, right? If there was a risk of decreasing fertility, that would be bad. But wouldn't it be bad to
doesn't go both ways?
Yeah, wouldn't it be bad to impact fertility of men also? Which is why, you don't jump to human trials and
I know you're
studies.
not gonna hurt, a baby and a man, but, you still can hurt fertility.
Yeah, and that's why we don't jump to human studies. By the time a study is at the phase of testing on people, they have a pretty good idea of what's gonna happen. They obviously they don't know for sure. Humans are not the same as animal models or in vivo cell models. They're not perfect models of the human system, but they have a pretty good idea, and you have to pass all of these benchmarks before you're allowed to do that. So yeah, in a way, some of these concerns make sense. You don't want to be hurting people's fertility in a trial. If there's a risk of harming a pregnancy, you don't want to do that. But things like bias and thinking that male are representative are an issue. Yeah, Kaylee, you have something to add?
I have no idea if you know this, but I know with the whole women are less likely, more likely to be put off with diagnoses. I know that's the same thing with obesity. Is it worse with obese women? They're more likely to be blamed, their medical issues are more likely to be blamed on obesity than men?
I want to do a whole episode on something called the beauty myth. It's I know. And I didn't look too much into it.
I'll save that question.
Well, no, it's a great question. I didn't look too much into it just because I was this is going to take me in a whole nother tangent. And I was I need to stay focused. I have a lot to get through. But it was basically doctors have this perception that attractiveness weighs into your overall health.
Oh, yeah.
And we're in a world where being a certain body type plays into attractiveness. So it makes sense that if you're an obese person, that you're then going to be seen ultimately as less healthy or playing in to diagnoses that don't necessarily have to do with your weight. And then as I was looking into it too, it was there's no correlation between perceived attractiveness and health. Which crazy, I know.
Shocking.
But the fact that there's its own the fact that there's its own term for it, I was I gotta go down that rabbit hole too. But yes, great question. So obviously this is an issue. Lack of comprehensive research negatively affects female patients by resulting in delays of treatment and applying of inappropriate, ineffective, or harmful treatments and or the withholding of effective treatments. For example, women typically present with different symptoms for acute myocardial infarctions, or commonly known as a heart attack, and are therefore less likely to have it identified due to under investigation of the sex differences in symptomology. Female patients, especially younger patients, are more likely to suffer major adverse events and ultimately mortality compared to their male counterparts.
Is that like currently?
Yeah, currently.
Okay.
Like currently right now, there are big sex difference between the symptomology of heart attacks. It's not very well understood. I think it's becoming a lot more aware that there are these sex differences, and therefore people are trying to do the research to discover those. But still, doctors are missing heart attacks in women, not noticing that they're happening because the symptomology is so different. And this causes more women to either have adverse effects of a heart attack that they wouldn't have had if it had been caught early and they received treatment, or to ultimately die because they were sent home and told that they were okay when they're not.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, so it's a big issue, because just because we're not testing it.
Yeah, I think there's also kind of this like social aspect where like people think like women don't get heart attacks, like it's kind of a uniquely male, and like they are like the majority of them do occur in men, but they can certainly happen to women, and I think it's important that doctors should know what to look for. You know, that's kind of their whole job.
Well, and I think we don't even really know, like, we'll get into a little bit, like, when we talk about, like, oh, like, there is a case for, like, you know, say, like, prostate cancer research should be done on mostly men, right? Like, that makes a lot of sense.
Right, or breast cancer research on women, like,
Yeah, so there is a case in some things, but then there's things like heart attacks where it's like, well, we're not doing the research, so we don't really know if it happens more in men than women, because we didn't actually get the data to decide that. We just already decided, and now we're going in with that bias.
I don't know why. This just reminds me of the whole, like, menstrual products not being tested with actual, like, menstrual blood for the longest time.
I should have looked into that. That would have been great for this episode.
What was the reason?
Yeah, did you hear about this, Nick? So basically they were like testing like the absorbency of like tampons and pads with just water, which is obviously like going to have different physical properties than blood does, you know, like viscosity, things like that. So the actual like measurements for absorbency were off. And it's like, yeah, that kind of sucks. But the big issue with that is also like doctors will diagnose certain like issues with how heavy your flow is based on like what absorbency like levels you use, when we don't actually know the absorbency level of any of these products apparently. So it's just like this huge oversight.
Right.
Just gonna tie everything back in sexism to periods.
Periods, man.
Yeah, I see how that could be an issue, because like you want like a common standard to use, but like I don't know where you would get a large supply of period blood to test with.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but like it is like something. How do we?
Yeah, but like
it's 2024. Someone can figure that out,
right?
I feel like the solution would be like,
an analog
that's what I'm saying.
Product.
Like, I feel like
a slime.
I feel like the big issue is that like the viscosity of water and blood isn't the same. I feel like there's some way to normalize that.
Oh,
someone smarter than me probably knows how.
You could very easily make a liquid with a similar viscosity to period blood. Yeah.
I think it's more that the fact that they were like, it's not that important.
Hell, you could use pig blood.
Men don't use
like just
exactly.
Use, like, animal blood. It would probably be better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so even if it's not exact, it's still a step in the right direction. Like putting the thought into it.
Let me write this down. We'll do feminine rage periods. Period.
Period.
Okay. Where was I?
And also, like, just in general, kind of reminds me of like, on top of being a woman, you're also more likely to receive like worse care if you're Black or any minority and obese and
all of
these other things.
And this is obviously to say that all of these things compound, like sexism and racism, like there's obviously a lot of intersection here. I just don't necessarily feel like I'm equipped to speak largely about racism. I feel like I have a better perspective on sexism. But yes, that is a very good point. Like a lot of this continues to compound, like if you're a woman of color or if you're like in any additional like marginalized group. These statistics just continue to escalate.
Because they just don't do any studies on like not white men.
So historically, women were more likely to be diagnosed with hysteria, and today are likely to be labeled as crazy or difficult women when they do not respond to treatments or diagnosis, as expected. So it's like, if you're not responding to this treatment that was only ever tested on men, you're the issue, you're a difficult patient, you're hard to work with. In an analysis of medical publications, it was found that sex and gender were analyzed in between 6 to 28% of publications, and female identifying authors were more likely to report results by sex and gender. So basically, when people are doing medical research, they're just not adding sex and gender as a factor, as a variable into their research. So at the high end, if we're giving benefit of the doubt, 28% of medical publications are considering that as something to consider. Specifically in biomedical research, women represent 37% of the total sample size of studies. This is attributed to the perception of the disease studying that if men are perceived to be affected more than women, that they should make up a greater percentage of the study. The issue is that perception of sex relatedness is often outdated. For example, women make up 30% of gout disease population, but make up only 5% of the clinical drug trials. So this is what we were talking about before. Like if you haven't studied it, you don't know if there is this sex difference right off the bat.
Let's give more women gout, is what I'm hearing.
No, the problem is that women already have gout. They're just not in the studies.
Yeah. Well, I think gout...
This is going to become...
Gout and like heart attacks.
What do you think about gout? What do you think about gout?
Gout and heart attacks used to be like a very like light, like the perception used to be that it was super lifestyle dependent, and it was like
those
dudes
are
who like
diseases.
Drink a lot and eat a lot of red meat and like smoke cigars and stuff like that. And now it's
and of course there are like lifestyle like impacts, but women like to eat red meat too.
Women can eat red meat and smoke cigars and drink heavily just as well as men can.
and we should be supporting that.
Yeah. I mean, I just realized y'all been talking about men a lot on this podcast.
Yeah, this is where women
no one's bringing woman lost
and in the worst light. I'll have to find a good
woman to the Arctic.
You know why? Because no woman is dumb enough to be like, you know what I should do? Stay out on my boat while it's storming, or go to the Arctic.
There's a certain amount of
like the best sex of her life, though.
Because no men are there.
There's a certain amount of like absurd audacity that those kinds of men have that get them into those situations in the first place.
Men are just silly.
I call that what is that? The
men
confidence
are silly,
of
women are crazy.
This is how I've been trying to live my life by. The confidence of a mediocre white man. I'm applying to jobs with the confidence of a mediocre white man. I'm going to the grocery store with the confidence of a mediocre white man. It's a mantra.
Nick, you're an above mediocre white man. You're killing it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
the greatest compliment I can give.
Haley, I feel like we talked about this at some point, and I don't remember like the exact numbers, but it was something like women will only apply to a job if they meet like 90% of the requirements, but men will apply to the job if they meet like 50% of the requirements. And let me tell you,
there's like a large gap in that.
I have been applying to jobs like a man recently. Like,
hell yeah.
I had never once applied to a job I didn't meet every qualification for.
No, like I immediately, like, I don't even read the job description first. I would go to the requirements, and if I didn't meet one of the bullet points, I'd be like, this isn't the job for me, and I would go to the next one. Now, I'm like,
Men just be hitting send.
Like, I was applying to jobs, like, and it was like all of these questions about like boating and sailing boats and stuff, and I was like, nope, apply, like, because in my head I was like, a man applied. Yeah. A man applied. I could learn to sail a boat.
Yeah, it's not
and then I'll be the woman lost at sea.
we need to lose more women at sea.
Podcast in your honor. I'll help.
Kaylee wants more women to be lost, and I can do it. I'm trying to
replace you. This is how. I'm gonna fund your mission.
Okay, so back on topic. We're saying women are not being represented in these studies. Okay, that's going to cause an issue, obviously, right? So, study coming out of the University of Chicago and University of California, Berkeley, suggests that women are being widely over-medicated and suffering excess side effects because drug dosages are calculated based on studies done on male subjects. For decades, women were excluded for drug trials for the false belief that hormone cycles would skew the results of the studies, leading women to experience more negative side effects from drugs, even when the dosage is adjusted for their body weight. Quote, for much of the time it's been practiced, biomedical science has been done by men on men. It even starts in a petri dish. Most cell lines used in early tests are male, and then drugs are tested on male lab animals. Okay, so in 1993, the NIH mandated that drug trials be run on both men and women. However, thousands of drugs on the market today were produced before this 1993 ruling. Additionally, many studies still underrepresent the amount of women included or don't even analyze the data for sex differences. If they do have this data, they choose not to publish it so that other people can't even do that work. Furthermore, the act has not resulted in any significant increase in the reporting of results by sex. One study found that in 96% of the medications that they analyzed, women metabolized the drug slower, resulting in higher levels of exposure to the drug, including common drugs such as aspirin, morphine, and many common antidepressants. Thoughts, comments, concerns?
That's really interesting. Because, like, at first the body weight thing seems to make sense, right? But then you realize, like, there are some, like, differences, generally speaking. Sex gets weird. Like, sex
right,
and
if
really
I'm...
weird.
If,
but,
okay.
like a man and a woman could be the same weight, but have, like, wildly different, like, body types and, like, body fat percentages and muscle mass and all of that. So, like, that makes a lot of sense that you would have differences.
And I hate a devil's advocate type bitch because he doesn't need you to speak for him. But to play devil's advocate for a second, like, if I'm looking at this from a scientist and I wasn't considering, like, metabolism or anything, and I was like, okay, I want to normalize my study. I want to have as few variables as possible. I can take these results from men and I can normalize them by body weight, and that should make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're then seeing that it's not working out that way, that there's some kind of extra variable that you're not accounting for, which from here it just seems to be the way that women break down the drug in their body.
Right.
Like, that's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big problem. And I couldn't find, like, I was looking for, like, some, like, more recent information about, like, okay, so they're saying, like, 96% of medications are metabolized slower in women, right? Okay. But then there wasn't any information about, like, what they're doing about that. They're just, like, and I get, like, they have, like, a why. They have, you metabolize slower, okay. But, like, and, like, one of the medications that they're citing is aspirin, but then there's no, like, this is what we're doing. Like, now that we know it's metabolized slower, this is what we're doing to fix it. This is, like, you need to be taking, like, this is the medication, this is the dosage you need to be taking if you're a woman.
Right.
Or we're retesting all of this stuff on women to figure that out. Whatever it is. Like, I was looking for that information, like, and that's not to say that no one out there is doing it and it's, like, unpublished at the moment. It's just to say I don't have that information right now.
Yeah. It almost makes me think it would be better, not that like BMI is a perfect system, but it might be better to normalize based on BMI and then also by sex. I don't know.
But it doesn't
obviously
even
this is
seem
something
that like
yeah,
but it doesn't even seem that body composition, because it does sound that way, that body composition was their like instinct of how like they should, because they're going off of body weight, right? And that has to do with body composition. But it seems to be more that there's like a actual physiological difference about how metabolism happens that wasn't factored in. So my guess would be like something with the liver. I don't know. I'm not a specialist in that area, but and we're going to continue to see this, that basically the world is built for men. So in the 1960s, a formula was used to determine the standard office temperature based on the metabolic resting state of the average man. Well, after a Dutch study, it turns out that young females, that in this formula, it overestimates the female metabolic rate by as much as 35%, meaning that most office spaces are on average 5 degrees too cold for women. So like, it's a little thing. Exactly. Yeah. It's a little thing, right?
Cold. And men are never cold.
It seems like a small thing, right? But it's like all of these small things that keep adding up. And it's like the world just isn't made for you. Like the office just isn't made to be comfortable for you. That's just the way it is. I wanted to look into like what this like formula was. But I was like, I gotta move on. I'm looking into too many things.
Right.
But they were basically just like, let's take this metabolic resting, like, let's take the metabolic rate of men, and then that's how we'll figure out what like an optimal temperature is. That makes sense, right? But this goes back to like the drug issue that like metabolism isn't the same. Like, so just again, like women are just often forgotten about, like, right? Like women are in offices, they don't need to be comfortable.
Yeah, they should be in the home cooking dinner, obviously.
Obviously, it's their fault for being in the workplace. Where they would be nice and warm. So, additionally, despite the fact that over the last 100 years, the workplace in the UK has become safer for men, with 4,400 deaths each year, reducing to 135 deaths, there's evidence that the workplace accidents actually continue to increase for women. Over the past... Go ahead, Kaylee.
Is that at all because like more women are going into more like dangerous jobs?
So yeah,
and then
I will say like caveat, like they're talking about over the last 100 years, right? So like we do expect that over the last 100 years, more women are entering the workforce and
like
entering more dangerous jobs, right? Like,
but we're also women were,
right? Like if you're talking about like over the last 100 years and women were just going from being in a kitchen to being on construction sites, that makes sense that that would increase danger, right?
Yeah.
But the issue is, and we're going to talk about it here. Yeah. The issue is it's not proportional, right? So like for every 100 men, say, in the workplace. So over the past 50 years, breast cancer rates for industrial workers have continued to rise, but there's been a failure to research females' bodies, occupations, and their related environmental conditions. Roy O'Neill, professor of occupational environmental policy research, says, quote, "We know everything about dust disease in miners, but you can't say the same for exposure, physical, or chemicals in, quote, women's work." He goes on to say that cancer is a long latency disease. So even if these studies were started today, it would take one full working generation to have any usable data. And we aren't starting those studies. We are continuing to rely on data involving studies for men. So the example that I saw in this case was like a lot of nail techs, right, tend to be women. And they work with a lot of chemicals and a lot of different things that you would be breathing in that may have health risk. But none of that has ever been studied. And things that are studied tend to be things with skin to skin contact, but they could be inhaling these, right? And And one issue is that when something is seen to be like women's work, things that are typically done in a house, right? Like you could paint your own nails at home. It doesn't get seen as something that's an occupation and therefore needs occupational research. So we see higher rates of cancer in working women, but there's been no push to figure out why. So we can just guess, basically. Let's continue. Oh, I'm out of breath.
That's fair. Like, what motivation do you need?
And I will say, okay, again, like coming from like, especially now that I've gotten to see like the like inside of research and like how it happens, so much of it is money. And
yeah, that's
so
for
much
sure.
Is there so much no money for women? Like,
and so much of getting the money is who you know, applying for those grants, being liked, and yes, like all of those stuff, like you're going against a board, it's anonymous, there's things for conflict of interest, right, all of that, but it's getting the opportunity to apply for those things and get the funding for it. And research runs on money. If you don't have the money to do it, it's not getting researched. And even if you have money, like there are so many times when we're like, this would be the best way for us to do this experiment. This is what we have the money for to do this experiment.
Yeah.
So it's all run by money. So if people aren't giving money to these things, it's not happening. So it's like, it's not like we don't know it's happening. It's just that people aren't either applying for the grants to make it happen. They're not getting funded. There's some disconnect. My guess is it's has to do with where money's going.
Yeah.
Money's power everywhere. Like,
exactly.
It just is.
And a lot of that is public interest.
Yeah.
Right? Like when COVID was happening, that was the most money that's ever been funneled into a research project ever in all of US history. And we saw a vaccine turn out in the matter of months. So it has to do with where money's going and what the public is pushing for.
I bet that the like boards and various groups that give out this money are probably male dominated as well, just given the expected age and, you know, the people who have like PhDs and stuff and who would be in those positions at this point. Hence why they're probably not
we live longer,
shoveling out money to, you know, studies into
women's work.
Right, women's work, etc., because that's not something that they care about.
Yeah, and like I work with a lot of really great like women that I'm like, you guys are amazing. You guys are such girl bosses. I love you. But it is still so male dominated, especially the people at the very, very, very top who are making these decisions. Like it's it still has a long way to go.
And that comes back to that institutional sexism and stuff.
That exactly the entire topic today. So the New York Committee for Occupational Safety and Health found that women have higher rates of sprains, strains, and nerve conditions of the wrist and forearms compared to men. Not surprisingly, there's a lack of data to conclusively determine why that is. But the leading hypothesis is that the standard construction site equipment is designed around the male body. For example, the standard hand tools like wrenches tend to be too large for women to grip. Same goes for all standard PPE. Employees will buy equipment in small sizes. However, differences in chest, hips, and thighs can affect how that equipment actually fits and therefore impacts its efficiency. For example, mask for dust and other hazards uses the dimensions of the standard, quote unquote, US male, and therefore often do not fit women or other Black and ethnic minorities. In emergency services, only 5% of women report that their PPE never inhibited their ability to safely and effectively do their job. And this includes body armor, stab vest, and high-vis vest. In 1999, a female officer reported that she had a breast reduction due to adverse health effects related to wearing ill-fitting body armor. This prompted 700 officers to come forward in large complaints that the standard issues of the standard issued vest. So I did also include, there's an image of like the differences between vests made for men and then like redesigns for women. And the big thing you'll see here is like differences in how the straps adjust to like fit around the chest of women. Mm-hmm. And the issue with just like sizing down a vest and not taking into account that you'll have maybe like larger chest to waist proportions is that the vests fall and you're no longer actually protecting your internal organs, which is the point of the vest, right?
Yeah, at that point, like why wear one?
Yeah. And I didn't include any of this research, but a big thing that I saw when I was researching was issues also in like the military with like standard issue equipment. And a lot of women talking about ways that they would like alter their vests, like they would add like paddings in the strap, or they would like take out part of the side so that it fit tightly around their waist. Mm-hmm. But then that causes like its own issues of like,
right.
It causes like its own snowball of issues. So it is like this, like you can't just size down equipment. Equipment needs to be made specifically with different body types in mind.
Yeah. And this was something that like militaries and other groups have figured out for men over decades mm-hmm. or centuries is, you know, mm-hmm. making the equipment adjustable to fit men's bodies. And they've had, you know, time and effort put into it, but it seems like you need to put more time and effort into the women's stuff more rapidly because they have entered the military.
Gonna be draft before I even have a uniform that fits me.
Exactly. And I will definitely caveat that the article I'm getting this information from is from 4 years ago. So I don't know like what's been done since then. Like
that's still so recent.
Yeah, 4 years is still pretty recent.
Even if they've changed now, that's insane.
And I couldn't find I looked for information to see like what the standard issues vests are now. And the fact that I couldn't find anything leads me to believe it's not that different. Mm-hmm. And another big thing I saw was that like there are vests made for women or like PPE specifically designed for women, but it's not standard issue. So you'd be like,
what does that stand for?
Standard issue? Personal protective equipment.
I wore it today and they kept saying it. I was like, what does that stand for?
It's your personal protective equipment, Kaylee.
PP.
Even things like when we had chem lab, Kaylee, like just like how we had to wear closed-toed shoes and like long pants. Like that's also PPE. Like anything
me in the
that's
factory with my steel toe covers.
And like having to keep your hair up is considered PPE. Like anything that's supposed to help you keep you safe in that environment. So in this case, we're talking about the vest. And I did see like there are companies that make these vests and things. They're just not the standard vest. So women have to go out of their way and like purchase those things themselves. Their own. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one size fits men is also something that's really prevalent in the tech world. So for example, the average phone size is made to comfortably fit in a man's hand, whereas it's typically too large to fit in one hand of a woman.
Like,
Kaylee, is this an issue you have?
I haven't thought about it, but now I might be mad.
Yeah. It's like I can
if I drop my phone on my face a lot.
If I'm texting, I'll kind of like move the one corner out of the way so I can actually move my thumb to both sides instead of having it like this.
Oh, interesting.
Like
I can reach all the way across mine.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
Like I can't reach the other side of my phone.
Oh, look, my Face ID
I almost
infrared LED is
your nail
maybe
find my
can.
Face.
My nail can.
Yeah, your nail definitely can. And that's why women get acrylics.
Hope my chemical.
Yeah.
The chemicals of these.
I just found an article from the Army Times from 2021 that female soldiers are getting new
what they say
armor carriers, plates, and stuff designed specifically for women. So
so they're
getting better,
trying.
But
they're making effort.
Yeah.
It's crazy that it took that long, though. 2021.
I know, right? Women have been allowed in the military for a long time.
And they were like, if you get stabbed, it's fine. You don't need your organs protected for that. Another example in tech, again, so I'm going to say in 2016, I was looking for more recent statistics on this, and there were more recent articles, but they all went back to this same study. So in 2016, linguist Rachel Tateman found that Google speech recognition software was 70% more likely to accurately represent male speech patterns.
Why was the only thing surprising about that the 2016 being 8 years ago to me?
Oh my god.
Okay, but also
stop.
Wait, I can add to this because so we talk a lot about like AI with like HR and like how we can use that. And there's a big issue with like adverse impact of the words that are used by different demographics. And AI actually, if you have them like reading through resumes or like reading like screening interviews, it can add to like a lot of adverse impact and a lot of discrimination against minorities if you're not careful with it and if you don't like selectively choose the words of the vocabulary. Because most people, when they program AI, they use like very like white male standard vocabulary.
Well, right, like who's programming these systems, right? It's people. Like computers aren't programming their own systems, so computers have the bias of the people that created them coded into them.
Yeah, the
and
training
if the people
data
that are coding these systems aren't taking that into account, or right, if the trained data is biased,
which it usually tends to be, because what they do is they just like scrape everything they can get from the internet, and
internet is biased.
A lot of the internet is biased. A lot of men say a lot of really shitty, stupid stuff on the internet, so it picks up on all of these things. And basically, you just need to like be careful with what data you're training your AI on. Also, AI is kind of like stupid.
Oh yeah,
that's another.
Yeah, like because it's the whole argument computers aren't biased, which is true, but the people that like program the computers are.
Yeah.
And they always
like
will be.
Your computer is gonna strictly follow the program that you give it, but the program that you give the computer is biased. It's gonna operate in that manner, which is the issue that it was finding with these speech recognition platforms, is that they're being trained on men, and therefore they're not recognizing women as well. And when this was becoming a big issue was when speech recognition was being introduced into cars. And it was supposed to make driving safer, make things more hands-free, and it's not picking up women's voices at all. Additionally, I didn't write down the exact quotes for this, but they were pointing out how, like, when Siri was first introduced, you could, like, hey, Siri, like, show me where to buy Viagra. And it could, like, give you, like, a direct links. But if you asked for, like, abortion care, it would be like, sorry, I don't understand what you're talking about. Just because, like, the men that were programming it were, like, even thinking about anything except getting hard.
Right.
Isn't there, like, I assume there still is, but, like, an extreme disparity with, like, racial face recognition software?
Oh, yeah, and I've seen that even with, like automatic soap dispensers, like, like the towel dispensers. Like, this is like a whole nother can of worms, like in like racism in the medical field, like the what is it called, you put it on your finger, you measure your oxygen, pulse ox.
Oh yeah.
Like pulse oxes won't work as well on like dark skinned people because
they never tested it.
It was made for white people to be used. It has something to do with light. Someone much smarter than me could probably explain it better.
I think there's like a light, and it measures like variations in the light intensity that transmit through your skin. But if you have dark skin, the light does not transmit through your skin as well.
Exactly. And like, we've known this since we made it, and we've just decided that it's okay that it doesn't work right.
And I think there are,
like, and that feels like a,
I don't know the specifics, but I'm sure you could use like a different wavelength of light that simply penetrates the skin better.
Yeah, like, I'm sure if we put the effort into figuring it out, we could, right? We decided it was fine that it didn't work, and it was good enough. And that goes back
good
to
enough for the people that fund it.
Exactly. It works for the people that funded it, therefore it's enough. So on that same note, cars are made for men. Men are more likely than women to be in serious car accidents, but women are 47% more likely to be seriously injured, 71% more likely to be moderately injured, and 17% more likely to die in a car accident. So women tend to be shorter.
I love the road.
I know. Women tend to be shorter, and therefore they sit closer to the dashboard to reach the pedals
like
and
this.
to see. Yeah, and to see over that.
And I'm not even short.
I don't feel like I'm that short either, but I definitely have to get close to the. Yeah, and I feel like I have to get close to the dashboard. But this obviously creates a greater risk for frontal collision injuries. And it's that because when. What does it remind you of?
One of my coworkers, we were out at a site, and it was, she had just started like a couple weeks ago, so it was her first site visit, and I was going to have her drive the truck. It's a Ford F-150. It's huge. I hate driving it. They suck. Mm-hmm. But you know, we need it for whatever. We need it for being on site. And she literally could not see over. Yeah, she literally could not see over the dashboard because she was pretty short, and the seat did not have any way to adjust it up and down because it's a work truck, and so it's like, you know, kind of bare bones on the inside. And like I was like, she literally cannot drive this car, like this vehicle, because. And you kind of mentioned this earlier with the construction equipment, but like it's literally not made for her. Like she could not use it.
It literally is hindering her ability to do her job that she was hired to do. So, so women tend to be shorter, therefore they sit closer to the steering wheel. Okay, cool. Well, the issue is when we like test cars, right? There's something called the standard position, and this is the position that they assume you're sitting in when you're driving a car. But women are never really sitting in that position because they need to pull the seat forward to reach the pedals. They need to lift up the seat to see over the dashboard. So they're not testing that position for cars. Furthermore, crash test dummies were first introduced in the 50s, and they were based around the 50th percentile male. So that means that 50% of males will be within that range, basically, is what that number is saying. So in 1980, researchers of Michigan University argued that a 50th percentile female dummy should be included in crash test studies. Well, that advice was ignored. That was the 80s.
Yeah, women don't drive.
In 2000, women don't drive. This is going to come up again.
Women get perms, and that's it.
Women get their nails done, and it's okay if they get cancer while they do it.
Eat hot chip, charge their phone, work.
How many, like...
The phone that doesn't fit in their hand.
And lie.
Be bisexual. Now all I'm thinking is how much...
Die in car accident.
How much cancer chemicals were in those perm? The aerosol?
Hairspray? Don't fuck with that shit.
Oh God, okay.
The cast of Hairspray is not making it to next year. Okay. So, in 2011, the US first started using female crash test dummies. However...
When?
In 2011.
Bruh.
2011.
It took...
Okay, we're gonna get in...
2011.
2011, they started using crash test dummies. For our audio listeners, big air quotes are involved. I'm going to tell you why.
Women have been voting for 50 years.
And they're still not doing it right. I'm going to tell you why.
Oh my God.
In 2018, Astrid Linder, the research director of traffic safety at the Swedish National Road and Transport Institute, found that the EU, that there is no regulatory crash test requirement for anthropomorphically correct female crash test dummies. So the dummy that they were using is a 5th percentile female dummy. However, it was only ever tested in the passenger seat. And the dummy was not actually represented. I mean, for me, that makes sense.
Dummy was.
I mean, but we had to have been using like child crash test dummies at this point.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
Wait, okay. 5th percentile. There's a picture. What was this?
There's a picture in the drive.
Legend?
There's a picture in the drive that shows these what these crash test dummies like size comparisons of them. So fifth percentile, I think, is like 4'11".
It's 4'11" and 110 pounds, basically. So a very small woman.
That's a child.
Yeah.
That's a child.
So furthermore, it's not actually representative of a female body composition because it is a male dummy scaled down, right? So they just took the dummy that they had, they made it smaller.
So they made a male child.
The weight
distribution. Yes, they were like, this is a boy.
It's like a teenage man.
Little boy.
Female.
It's a 13-year-old man. 13-year-old boy.
A little pubescent boy.
So women are not scaled down males, right? They have different muscle mass distribution. They have lower bone density in always. I've always said this. They have lower bone density. They also have differences in their vertebrae spacing. And most importantly, like in their neck, they'll have like more mobility. So like when you're making a crash test dummy, that's an important thing to consider, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So do women get whiplash worse?
And yes. I feel like in addition to like, average, whatever, median male and female crash test dummies, they should probably be like throwing some extra shit in there, like some that are a little extra bendy, some that have like slightly different weight distributions. Like, be thorough with this. Like,
I'm gonna get to that, Nick. I'm glad you said that.
Because
I'm glad you said that because the first pregnant crash test dummy was created in 1996, but it's still not government mandated to be tested in the US or the EU. However, car crashes are the number one...
The number one what?
Someone's twisting my doorknob. God, I almost missed my pants. I'm gonna piss.
Okay, well, it sounds like pregnant crash test dummies or pregnancy.
Do you need something?
You can mute yourself, by the way.
So, where was I? I don't know. No one came in. It
was one of the cats.
I just thought they were going to. So, okay, this is what I was going to say.
Compose yourself.
Oh my god, we're getting unhinged. Okay. So car crashes are the number one fetal death related to maternal trauma. However, no seatbelt has ever been tested for pregnant women.
I think you should do a whole episode on cars, honestly.
I think we could, because I hate cars.
I also hate cars. We could do a car episode.
Child mortality rates, I think you should do a car episode, because child mortality rates I told you I could
complain about everything, and I'll complain about cars.
I'm going to send you lists of things that I think you should complain about. Because I'm a hater to my core.
And there's one thing about me, I'm a hate on it. So, in 2004, research indicated that pregnant women should use the standard seatbelt. But 62% of third trimester pregnant people indicated that they wouldn't fit in a standard seatbelt design. Okay.
Cool.
And, I mean, we've made car seats for children years. Like, we know that like different body sizes and shapes have an impact on these things. Like,
yeah, but children are more important because they might be children.
Oh, that's a very good point.
I mean, if there's one thing about our young boys. If there's one thing about America, we do know that we care more about fetuses than mothers.
That is true.
Oh my gosh.
That could be its own episode too.
Did you guys see? No.
But I do remember seeing like this pregnant woman on TikTok, like talking about like this little seatbelt contraption that she got because she couldn't fit her seatbelt over her stomach. And it was like, it basically created like a little, like, when you're in a roller coaster and it comes up between your legs and then you clip it. Mm-hmm. It created something like that. But then all the comments were like, I feel like this is more dangerous. I feel like you're going to break your pelvis if you get in a car accident.
Under your belly.
Yeah, I think so too. So then she was like, oh, I'm trying to do research to figure out what the safest thing is. And I don't know if she ever figured it out.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think the belly makes sense because you don't want that belt pushed into the,
my tangent. That isn't necessary. But did you guys see the guy that got like 6 months of prison for like feeding, I don't know if his girlfriend or wife, like medicine to make her like continually miscarriage in Texas.
Yes, I did see
and he
this.
got 6 months. Yet if she went and got an abortion, she would have been charged for like manslaughter.
All I'm seeing is a loophole.
What?
Hey, she has to endure 9 months. You can deal with 6.
Kayla and I took this different ways. Kayla was like, "There's a loophole."
No.
I feel like after the episode, I'm still gonna have so many things I want to say.
That's why we usually do a little FaceTime.
Anyway,
okay.
I gotta make dinner.
Anyway,
I'll bring Quinn into it. It'll be great.
One last quote about these dummies. So this is from Tom Peterson, research engineer on the project to design female crash test dummies. He says, quote, "The muscles in the neck are normally weaker in women. So if you compare it with a male dummy, the neck is more flexible and has more movement if you perform exactly the same crash test at exactly the same speed and acceleration," end quote. So again, you can't just scale down your dummy. It's not going to be the same. You're not actually testing what it's like on females. That's the issue.
Yeah,
okay.
And the weight distribution is different through the hips. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm. Women got boobies.
They do.
We got titties.
Very famous. Very famously.
Got some
women famous for titties and periods.
Quite literally like a life source.
And breast cancer.
Woman, you may have heard of these things. You know, they have boobs, they have periods.
Women.
Everybody knows this.
But it's not just crash
way
test
less than
dummies.
I thought.
How much do they weigh?
We looked it up.
It's like 2 or 3 pounds. I kind of remember. I remember looking this up. Yeah.
It was like a pound per cup, maybe.
That's still 6 pounds total.
Yeah.
I don't. Well, you'll have to figure it out later.
No wonder my neck and back hurt. So, it's not just crash test dummies that are designed with men as the default, but it's CPR mannequins. In 2017, a study by the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine found that men's odds of survival are 23% higher when it comes to public life-saving measures. Public research indicates that this may be because people are less comfortable delivering CPR to women that they don't know because it requires touching boobies.
Okay, I always wondered that. Because CPR, you're taught to, like, break ribs, right? And I've always thought, you gotta get through the boobie first.
You gotta get through the But, when you're lying down, your boobie's kind of like...
No, they do. They do.
But But you're not teaching people that, right? Like, you're not practicing it, and then people aren't comfortable with it, and that creates a 23% sex difference on life-saving measures.
So now you can't, like, touch a woman. That's a whole other episode. Yeah. That's a whole other...
You love touching without consent until she's dying.
All of a sudden, you can't do it.
It's an issue. So, the organization... Womankin aims to bridge this gap by designing a CPR mannequin attachment that can slip onto existing mannequins and train people on giving CPR with boobies. They actually seem like they're a pretty cool organization. They're like,
yeah, I'm sure they are.
Yeah, they're all about like.
I want to see
really
a
slip-on breastplate. I think there's an image. I think I uploaded an image.
Yeah, you put a GIF in there.
Is it this?
Womannequin.
This is that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. The fact that the
insane.
name is Womannequin is so funny to me.
It's so funny.
Womannequin.
And they're kind of like, their whole mission statement is kind of about like also bridging the gap between like cardiovascular health and sex differences and like making training accessible. And they also like made their whole like prototype and like schemes or whatever they're called in the engineering world like free to download so that people can like make them themselves if they want. So they seem like they're pretty cool. However, training on male-presenting mannequins are still the standard for CPR training, as one may have guessed.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Okay, we're nearing the end. I have 2 more examples for you.
No female mannequins when I got my CPR training.
There were no female mannequins when I trained either. I trained in like 2016, though.
I did it like 6 months ago.
Somehow.
Oh, and no boobies?
No boobies.
No boobies. Nick has touched no boobies.
Well, we knew that.
Very famously.
He's famously not a booby toucher.
He famously knows about them, but does not touch them.
He's heard of them, that's for sure. That laugh was a little too laughy.
Nick's aspirations for the year.
It's on his bucket list though, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's on my to-do list.
It's to-do. I'm gonna get out there.
So you guys might remember back in 2019 when the first all-female spacewalk was postponed for 7 months following the realization that NASA did not have enough spacesuits that fit the women planned for the walk.
NASA's so silly.
They're so silly.
They're so goofy like that.
Many people noticed that it spoke volumes that the only available sizes were medium, large, and extra large, and that there was only one medium suit properly equipped for a spacewalk. In 1990, Skinny Legends.
Sorry.
In 1990, NASA got rid of their small size spacesuit due to budget costs, resulting in 1/3 of women at the time unable to fit in any spacesuit available. And this is my last example. This is the example I'm going to leave you with. So, oh god, I feel like I'm about to pronounce this name wrong, and it's going to be embarrassing.
You've got this.
I don't know. I really don't want to do it.
I believe in you.
Jumping between two possibilities. I'm jumping between two possibilities here. No, it's a really famous person.
Say both.
Go with the second.
All right. When basketball player Stephen Curry? Am I right?
Stephon Curry, yeah.
I've never heard just say Steph.
Just keep going.
Keep going. Steph Curry.
Steph Curry.
I've never heard him
when basketball player
called by his full name.
Stephon.
When basketball player Steph Curry designed a new line of shoes, only boys' sizes were offered, prompting a 9-year-old Riley to write the athlete saying, "I know you support girl athletes because you have 2 daughters. I hope you can work with Under Armour to change this because girls want to rock the Curry 5s too." Well, Curry... Slay. Riley is such a slay.
Riley, go. Riley's my icon.
She's girl bossing.
Well, I hope she got those shoes.
100%.
She's so girl bossing. Well, Curry responded to her saying that the smaller sizes had simply been labeled as boys on the website. Okay.
Oh. I mean, do I know I fit in a kid size 6?
Yeah.
And will I buy a kid size 6? Yes.
It's okay, if I'm buying a have I looked at men's shoes before? For sure. And I know that my men's shoe size is a US size 7. But when you buy Converse, right? Converse are unisex, so it's just listed as unisex sizing. Why are they listed as boys size? Yeah, that's the part that irritates me.
The fact that men's and women's shoe sizes
too
are separate. The fact that
also dumb.
Yeah, men's and women's clothing sizes being separate is incredibly stupid.
The fact that men's clothing size makes sense.
Yes.
Too.
The men's
really
pant size,
pisses me
waist,
off.
and
because what do you mean? What do you mean?
So intuitive.
2, 4, 6, 8. What? What are these measurements? What are we going off of?
Every woman I've ever talked to about pant size,
on women's clothing.
We should.
We could literally probably do a fashion episode.
Yeah. Every woman I talk to about pant sizing is like, "Oh yeah, I have 6 different sizes that I sometimes fit in depending on the brand and depending on the fit and the cut and everything." It's ridiculous.
The only pants that have ever fit me well are the pants Nick bought at Goodwill and I took from him.
And here's the thing, we all still know what our waist measurement is, and then we go into the size guide, and I go, okay, I have a 27 waist. Which one of these sizes is 27? Mm-hmm. Why not just make the size 27?
Right!
Why do I have to go and do a little conversion?
Well, also when the woman's size chart has hips and waist, and my hips fit one and my waist fits the other, I'm like, what do I do? What do I pick? I have no idea.
You guess, and then if you don't fit it, you just donate it to Plato's Closet because you know you're never going to figure out how to go to the post office.
Every single time. Without fail. That is literally... I stopped.
I should have kept those pants I gave you because I would fit in them now. Maybe. I don't know.
I'm not sure I would. Skinny legends? Nick and I are the same size.
You guys can switch pants next time you see each other.
Yeah.
The zipper broke, but once the zipper's fixed, we'll do a little sisterhood traveling pants, and we'll send it back and forth.
So cute. You guys should start putting like
really
patches
cool
on them every time.
Wait, that'd be so fun. They're really good pants.
They are really good
I think
pants.
that's such a cute idea. Okay. Send them to me too, I'll wear them.
Yeah, you'd fit.
I do still have a bunch of patches. Like, I've just been collecting them, and I don't know what I want to put them on yet. Like, I haven't gotten a piece of clothing where I'm, like, ready to commit it as my
I have that
clothing.
same issue. I have so many patches, and I don't know what to do.
Oh my god, I think they're sitting right here on my desk.
Wait, do a bag with them.
A bag? You think? Like, I got this one
like a
at
backpack,
Abbey Road.
that'd be cool. Oh.
A bag's cute.
I've gotten one at every national park I've been to.
The neighbors gave me this one. I think I got this one at the Children's Museum.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Would you wear like a patch denim jacket?
I would, but I haven't found a jacket that I liked is the problem.
I'll be on the lookout when I go to like thrift stores and stuff for you.
Keep your eyes out.
Yeah.
But I have a bunch of them.
Like, what are you looking like? Do you want pants? Do you want a
me.
jacket? Do you want like a skirt?
I feel like denim jacket would be the most wearable.
I love mine.
I like the bag idea. I never thought of that.
The bag idea is cool.
Bag's super cute.
I've seen a lot of like
I don't know why. Now
backpacks
I
with
want
a lot
like
of
a
patches
denim
on them.
bag.
Those are cool.
I see
that,
but I feel like the on jeans is a cool idea. Like if you did like a denim bag.
I like the idea of jeans
that'd be
too.
sick.
The problem is like jeans fit you for like a year and then you're like wearing different jeans, you know?
But a denim bag would fit you forever.
Exactly. I'm never gonna grow out of that.
That's a sick idea.
Yeah, or some kind of like heavier fabric backpack. I think
I have one last thing for you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a little quote to end with. That was my last example. So I'm going to end with this quote from Laura Bates, the founder of the Everyday Sexism Project. She says, quote, "There are people who deliberately want to brush this under the carpet because it benefits them to keep the system as it is. There's also genuine invisibility of the problem, which arises from a number of factors, like the blaming of victims, which silences women. There are a million ways in which we learn from a very young age, firstly, that this is to be expected, and secondly, that if you do make a fuss, you should expect to be the one who's blamed. This silences the problem." End quote. Anyone want to fill the silence?
The men who make a lot of the rules historically ignore women who are having the issues and blame them for it.
And I like what she says. That's like, if you make the fuss, then you also become the one to blame. Like, it's like,
the problem.
Well, it wasn't an issue and you made it a problem.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we didn't have to buy more vests until you pointed it out, and now we have to buy more vests.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're the problem. The problem wasn't that we didn't have the vests to begin with.
No, of course not.
Also, I feel like at the beginning of the episode, you started out with like, it's been like a generational thing, and some like women feel birthed with like feminine rage while others grow into it. Mm-hmm. And I definitely don't feel like I grew up with it, but like over the years, the more I just experienced being a woman, not even in my personal self, I mean a little bit, but more like seeing other women around me.
No, I think that's a good point, like because
it grew. The feminine rage is real. When
you have like that naive innocence of a kid, like you see all this stuff as being like an old issue, like it's like not a modern problem. It's like, oh, well, sexism is something that happened in the 50s, but we've grown so far from then. And, you know, we got the vote, we got all these things, so sexism doesn't exist anymore. And then like as you grow and like you start to experience those issues is in like, they're small things, right? They're things like office buildings not being like thought of with you in mind, or cars not being thought of with you in mind, but they build on top of each other, and you just realize that the world isn't built with you in mind.
I think as a kid, I was always like, oh, like my grandma probably, or like my great grandma and my grandma probably experienced this. And then I got a little older and I was like, wait, no, my mom probably experienced like sexism in her everyday life. And then I get older and I'm like, oh, wait, no, I'm still going to have to like
experience sexism.
I still don't have control over my own body in my current state. So that's great. That's fantastic. Love that.
And I don't want to undermine like the privileges that we have. Like I saw a really great creator today, like talk about like how two things can be true at the same time, like this intersectionality of things. And he was a Black man. He was talking about like, yeah, I can go out at night and I have that privilege to like to walk freely at night and not be afraid. But then the things that I'm afraid of are like being harassed by the police versus like I don't go out and worry about being harassed by the police, but I go out and I worry about being harassed by men. So I'm aware of the privileges, but there's also these things that continue to be disadvantages also.
Yeah.
And that's
and
why
it's like the current debate with like white feminism too. Sorry, Nick.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
But don't talk over women, Nick.
I didn't.
But like white feminism, where so many like social media feminists, like they really care about like white women's rights. And like as like a white woman, like I know that there's a certain privilege with that. Like, yeah, sure, I'm still gonna experience what it means to be a woman, but I'm never gonna experience anything that goes along with being like a Black woman. Like, it's the intersectional feminism is real feminism, and you can't have feminism without intersectional feminism.
Yeah, and like of course, like when I went through the history like leading up to this, like I spoke about racism a lot because sexism comes from racism, and like you can't talk about one without talking about the other. And maybe one day I'll like have the confidence to feel like I can like adequately speak on that intersectionality between racism, but I don't think I'm there yet. I think I have a lot more research and a lot more to learn, and maybe more voices that I need to bring into this podcast before I can have that conversation. Yeah, but
yeah.
Yeah, but
like,
yeah,
you know,
there's
it's
a lot
an issue,
to
but it's also not your place to talk about
exactly.
it.
Like it's an issue, but I don't necessarily think I have the perspective to speak on it.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that it doesn't exist.
But that's part of why intersectionality is like very important, because like all of these issues affect people in ways that even you may not even be aware of immediately, but like it's still important to like work together to like,
and I do want
to overcome them, because typically when one group wins, all of the groups win in some way, you know?
Yeah, and I do I think
unless
another
it's
episode
white men.
Well, yeah.
Well, I do want to another oh my god,
Sorry,
I'm hiccuping. Another episode that I think I want to do in this series is just the patriarchy as a whole, because like sexism does also negatively affect men, and the patriarchy negatively affects men. Like no one's really benefiting from the patriarchy except the people that are on the top, right? So I didn't have the like time or bandwidth within this episode to discuss it, but that definitely exists too. Like men are affected by sexism in the same ways, and the patriarchy negatively affects everyone that lives underneath it. And when we talk about systemic things like this, like as we talked about before, they're less overt, they're less in your face, they don't necessarily push against social norms, and therefore they're easier not to talk about and easier like not to notice. And when that happens, they don't necessarily get changed. How are you guys feeling?
You know,
I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot. This was kind of a heavier episode.
It's a necessary conversation. And I really am like glad I got to be a part of it. But I do think there's so much more that needs to be.
I know, there's so
much more. I'm like plotting my return.
It's
even as I was like writing the episode, I was like, I have so much more I need to research, but I was like, we only have so much time.
It's gonna end up me like afterwards doing research and texting Kayla and being like, hey, I found this. Hey, if you don't have a guest like next week, hey, like
Kaylee's just gonna be like the feminine rage guest, and then she's gonna need like severe mental health treatment.
And I would love that.
It's one of those big
I already do. Like
multi-generational issues, you know, it just really sticks around for a long time. And it's gonna be something that, you know, it has and is going to continue to be a problem for a very long time. But like it's also one that like
I think that's even
really important to keep working on no matter what. Yeah.
That's so interesting. I feel like to think about, like, I feel like you're thinking your current position, and then you're thinking about, like, your own relatives, you're thinking about history, you're thinking about everything.
Yeah, but, like, and then I think, like, obviously, like, our parents or grandparents experienced those things, but I think, right, there were all those microaggressions and, like, systematic things, but then there are also, like, those more overt things where you'd be like, I'm not crazy. It's right in front of me. Versus the things we experience now, it's like it's so easy to talk yourself out of it. Kaylee, you don't have to raise your hand.
I don't want to interrupt. I feel bad when I interrupt people.
See, I feel like I interrupt people a lot on accident.
It's
just
hard
now.
That's why I was like I
this.
listened to the first two. I want to make sure I'm respectful. I listen. #1 fan. No, but I feel like even that, like, I don't know why I always think of this example, but like when my grandma was younger, she loved whistling. Do you guys know this story? And she whistled all the time. And my grandfather once told her, it's not ladylike to whistle. And she never whistled again.
He never got his dick sucked again after that.
And she can't whistle anymore. And she was telling me about it once. He was like, it's not ladylike. They were telling, I think it was Abby and they were telling us the story. And I was like, excuse me?
Girl, whistle right now. I would have started
whistling in front of your grandpa.
I'm like,
you gotta help your grandma learn how to whistle.
Yep. And he like laughed this off because like obviously it was a long time ago. Yeah, he was like, this was a long time ago. Like it's not a big deal anymore, and like it wasn't. But like, and my grandma clearly was like, it's fine. But I was a little hurt for her.
Yeah.
No, I feel like
it made me like think about that, like thinking about like how recent it was that a man was putting a woman in her place. Like, no, you can't whistle. Sorry, that was
that's a really good example because
what?
Do you remember? I feel like this was like a TikTok trend where people were being like, "Oh, your grandparents thinking they're telling a really cute story of how they met, but it's actually just like, oh, your grandma was abused."
No, that's my grandma has always told me, like, the same grandma was always like, don't get married young. Whatever you do, don't get married young. I regret getting married young. And I think she was like 27 when she got married, which for her time was not young.
I was going to say, that was like older than I expected.
Yeah.
And she still was like, I lost out on so much.
Oh my God. No, it's so sad. Because I always see these stories of like, there's always like these weird age gaps and like, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with this. Now I'm just rambling. But then like, and they're like, she kept saying no, but I kept persisting. I'm like, and you're proud of that?
Yeah.
Me too, Quinn.
Yeah, but the like...
That's like, different. I'm a girl.
The weird like...
Yeah,
old ideas of courtship and stuff. And it's...
Yeah, men can't be abused. Cut that out.
Quinn is not abused. Do not worry.
I will.
Men can be abused.
No, I think that would be a really fun episode to talk about the patriarchy because I want to talk about how the patriarchy negatively affects men. It's the same way as how like when you...
Because then men really will understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Get a man on here for it.
Yeah.
It reminds... we need more male
Nick,
guests,
I know
that's
you,
for sure.
but we need like a... We need a different type of man.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what the right man would be for that.
You need one who's going to be convinced.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of like for the disabled community, how like providing accessibility benefits everyone.
Right.
It's like dismantling the patriarchy like benefits everyone too. So I think that would be a really fun thing to talk about also. But I think we're gonna need a break for a little bit because this was more of a heavy topic and less of a fun topic.
That's true.
Less jokey joke. I don't even know how to end
some
this.
Jokes out there.
Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been another incredible episode.
Oh my God.
This podcast counts as socializing. Thanks for listening. We've been your hosts, Nick and Kayla, and Kaylee, our guest. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube, and podcasts are available wherever you get your podcasts: YouTube, Spotify, Apple. I think that's it right now.
Yes, and also if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, I will not be accepting corrections. You can email us at thispodcounts@gmail.com, and I would love to hear from you and read what you have to say.
And our YouTube is...
Kaylee, do you have anything you want to shout out? Our YouTube, Instagram, everything is either at thispodcounts or thispodcounts is socializing. Kaylee, do you have anything you want to say, shout out, add to the conversation before we go?
I think if we can get this to a record amount of views, then they will have me back, and I know everybody wants me back, so let's incentivize that. Let's get me back on the podcast.
A record amount of views for us would be 20.
Ooh.
So
let's get it to 20, guys. 20 and I'll return.
Tell your friends, family, cousins, sisters, husbands, and wives.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, maybe we'll dive deeper into the patriarchy.
We need to come up with a little like ending card. Like one of the podcasts I listen to, they go, this has been blah blah blah, and we're sorry, and then they hit end. You know what we mean?
Yeah.
Like we need one of those.
This has been socializing, and we're done.
Yeah. So if anyone has any suggestions, DM me, email me, give us your ideas, because we need a good little signature calling off.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.